this is the first time that he is actually in the room watching her testimony. This violates the rules of decorum of the court to have these, what's being reported as, these overt reactions.
At one point, Trump even slammed the table in anger. Judge Kaplan says, lawyers don't tell me what they will be asking. I make the rulings here. Sit down. It's been going on and on like that.
Hey everyone, it's David, producer for The Benjamin Dixon Show and Like It or Not. So last week, Trump was in court ending the civil trial against his businesses and himself and his family. This week, he's back in court in New York in the second civil trial involving E. Jean Carroll. And just a reminder that he's not obligated, required, incentivized, he's not even encouraged to be present in the courtroom during these trials. Neither of the New York cases.
So you mentioned he can't prejudice the jury. He can make an impression on them. He's there. He doesn't even have to be there. This is voluntary. Does it work in his favor, potentially, that he is there in the courtroom?
Well, it at least shows that he's taking the case seriously. We've heard that he might testify. We don't know if he will. The judge has put some parameters on what he can testify about. So whether or not that impacts his decision to take the stand, we'll have to see. I do think it was a mistake, and I said this back when we were covering the original trial, to not attend. It's such serious subject matter, and optically, it looks like he's not taking the case seriously at all. So now he's here.
And there's still another case that we haven't even seen begin and reach the trial point. Manhattan District Attorney Bragg is prosecuting him for the hush money, allegedly paid to Stormy Daniels. But I digress. He's back in court this week, and in this case, he's not even facing allegations of wrongdoing. The wrongdoing has been decided.
A jury in a previous civil trial agreed, finding Trump liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll.
That trial concerned comments that Trump made after he was president. This trial concerns things that he said about her while he was president. And the first verdict carries over. So this isn't a question of whether Trump defamed Carroll a second time. It's really just a question of whether he'll have to pay damages and how much for that additional instance.
This case determines how much he will have to pay in liability to E. Jean Carroll on top of the first $5 million that was determined when the first jury determined that he was liable for sexual abuse, and when the judge in that case labeled him a rapist. And even though we're fed up and tired of Trump, there's just some parts that we can't ignore, and we have to check in now and then. And this is one of them because it's becoming a circus, which is predictable. Trump wasn't at the first trial. He didn't attend. So now he's in court.
As far as Trump's remarks in court, remember the prior trial involving E. Jean Carroll, where he was found liable and the damages were $5 million, he did not attend. So this is the first time that he is actually in the room watching her testimony. And, this violates the rules of decorum of the court to have these, what's being reported as, these overt reactions to the testimony. But in this particular case, liability is not an issue. And therefore, this is really all about damages. So the judge rightfully said, you can confer with your attorneys, that's your right, but you have to maintain a level and demeanor where the jury is not going to be impacted, because that could ultimately result in something prejudicial to the jury.
And because that's not appropriate or relevant in this case, they are clashing. Two of his attorneys, as well as Trump himself, they are clashing with Judge Kaplan.
One of the things that the judge had said early on is that he didn't want either side in this proceeding to make any remarks that could be heard within the earshot of the jury. E. Jean Carroll is on the stand in direct examination, and during her statements, Trump could be heard saying Carroll's statements are false. Now she seems to have gotten her memory back. At one point, Trump even slammed the table in anger, and when Judge Kaplan told his attorney, Alina Habba, to sit down, Trump was heard saying, nasty guy. after the break, the judge, before the jury was brought into the courtroom, the judge said, I'm going to ask Mr. Trump to take special care to keep his voice down so that the jury does not overhear him. In another instance where it was between the judge and Trump's defense attorney, she was saying something about what she was going to be asking Jean Carroll once they came back, and it was her term for cross-examination. Judge Kaplan says, lawyers don't tell me what they will be asking. I make the rulings here. Sit down. It's been going on and on like that.
Now, I do just want to say that we should really be careful not to allow Judge Kaplan to become a darling of centrists. He is the judge, or one of the two judges, that oversaw the private prosecution paid for by Chevron against Stephen Donziger. But let's get to this trial and what's actually happening in the courtroom.
She kind of started out of the gate laying down what this case is about, and that is the potential harm that she received when Donald Trump denied her allegations of rape and then said that she wasn't his type and that she made it up to sell a book. So what she testified to right at the start was she said, I'm here because I was assaulted by Donald Trump, and when I wrote about it, he said it never happened. He lied and he shattered my reputation. So right as E. Jean Carroll said that, Donald Trump, who is facing her, sitting at least 3 tables back from her, he was shaking his head side to side in a sign that it never happened. They've just now gotten to the part of this story of what happened after she published her book with the rape allegation and Donald Trump began making his statements. She then talked about what happened afterwards, and that included text messages, it included Facebook messages, tweets, and other communications from people who she was too ugly to go on living, but also physical threats that she said really terrified her. And one of these encounters, she said, was just after she went public. She looked on Twitter, she saw a bunch of mean tweets about her, calling her a liar, and then she checked her E. Jean Carroll Ask E. Jean mailbox, and she said then that she saw a death threat. She said in her reaction, I read it and I ducked. I thought I was going to get shot. She also described that certain steps that she took to try to beef up her security.
So as usual, it really does seem like Trump is testing his limits. We know that when a judge tells him to be quiet or keep it down, the judge knows he's not going to listen, and Trump is not going to take it seriously. It's really just a warning that the judge is giving before he reaches the point of actually removing Trump from the courtroom. What wasn't said in these clips is that at one point the judge actually warned that he would remove Trump from the courtroom.
You have a right to attend. You do not have the right to be disruptive or to disregard court orders. I hope that I do not have to remove you from the courtroom. And that's when Trump, just as Judge Kaplan said, couldn't help himself and said, I know that you would like nothing more. I know you really want to do that. And Kaplan, more in sorrow than in anger, shook his head and said, you just can't help yourself in these circumstances, can you? And then Kaplan walked off the bench.
I don't think the question is if, but when Trump pushes so far that the judge does remove him from the courtroom.
Knowing Judge Kaplan and how he's controlled his courtroom so far, this isn't the last we've heard of it. And it's likely that we won't have to see another outburst from former President Trump for Judge Kaplan to revisit this subject. Multiple times he has said to Alina Habba things like, if you don't have an objection, sit down. You're not here to make announcements.
We'll keep an eye on it. You can let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And as always, we'll be back with more.